So you've been on a couple of times.
Absolutely. It's been fun.
I love it. This time, I want to ask you, why do you think that superhero stories are really resonating with a lot of people today?
I mean, throughout the history of mankind, people have been telling hero sagas, right?
Yeah.
Heroes, the idea of a hero is that a single person, regardless of, creed, age, whatever, can make a difference as long as they're brave and they try hard.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thing.
I think that's it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, comics, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and joining me today is my good friend and guest, Michelle Chiang.
Hi, guys.
Welcome back.
I'm back.
She's back. So, what would you like to say to introduce yourself? You've been on so many times. I feel silly, but I mean, there are people who probably haven't heard the other shows.
Yeah. So I host Geek Out, which can also be found on the RTI platform. Generally speaking, I'm a jack of all trades, but essentially a nerd at heart.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I chose to talk about Avengers Endgame today, because Marvel comics touch my soul.
Can I ask what, because you often describe yourself as a nerd, what flavor of nerd
there's
do you
many,
see
right?
yourself as?
I mean,
because there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of them. Like for me, I would say that like I'm a nerd. I'm kind of a fantasy nerd and a video game nerd.
Yeah.
Like at my heart, like I grew up playing computer games, and that has like changed who I am to my core. So like reading graphic novels and computer games.
Yeah.
So
I would say animals nerd.
Yeah.
Yep, just nature and keeping a pet, has husbandry, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But right, I also love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I stuff like Supernatural, I have many fandoms basically that I'm huge on.
Okay.
So that's the kind of nerd I am.
I love it. So it's not a secret. Today we're talking about the Avengers Endgame.
So spoiler alert.
Yeah, this is not a spoiler-free show. It is possible, like there are people who've never finished Harry Potter, so it is possible you may not have finished the first big Avengers arc.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about today. So if you don't want to hear about it like this, you should sign off. Check in with us next week. So to kind of help you with like the summary of that, that's a really big...
This is huge. Okay.
It's a really big thing. Yeah. I can try to like summarize the events before that. It's going to be very quick. We're going to skip over some stuff, but we're mostly just going to focus in on the events of the last movie to help you out with that.
Yep.
So if you want to get into something else in one of the other arcs or books, contact me. Come on here. Let's talk about that. But today we're just talking about Endgame.
Yep.
Before that, the first Avengers series, there was kind of an overall story that revolved around, there were two pivotal heroes, Captain America and Iron Man.
Yep.
Those two were important because they ended up having kind of two squads of other superheroes that followed them.
Yep.
The big superheroes in this first arc were Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Black Widow.
Yes, Black Widow.
And
Hawkeye.
And Spider-Man.
Yep.
Who was the youngest of the group. Now, there are a lot of things that happen in between, but ultimately the main crux of the story that this kind of came to was that these superheroes had fought enemies from space and became aware of a coming invasion where a big bad, who they didn't discover the name of for a very long time, was coming to take over Earth or to take something from Earth. And it revolved around these very powerful rocks called the Infinity Stones.
Yes.
These stones had amazing powers that could do things like come to life themselves, form an avatar, slow down time, create things, destroy things.
Yep.
And there were 6 of them.
Yes, correct.
There were 6 of them. So these stones were what was most important. But in trying to discover what the real threat was, the heroes kind of divided themselves into 2 groups. One group who believed that heroes should be able to do what they want.
And the other that believed that should be governed.
It should be governed. And this was a really hotly debated thing.
Yeah.
Come to Endgame, where the invasion finally comes here, and it is led by a man from space.
We should say Infinity War, the preceding movie,
Yes.
the prequel to Endgame.
So the invasion finally comes to Earth in the previous movie.
Yep, Infinity War.
Infinity War, over the Infinity Stones. And it's led by a man named Thanos, who is trying to put these stones into a gauntlet, which he has decided he will use to erase half of the population of the galaxy. Not just Earth, but the galaxy, to create peace, because there are too many people.
In his own background story, his backstory, he grew up as a child on a planet that overextended its use of resources.
It was overpopulated.
Basically. And everything
crash
fell
point.
apart.
Yeah.
To a point of, Armageddon, basically.
Yeah.
So he goes through the galaxy doing this, and he finds out about the Infinity Stones, which will allow him, if all 6 are collected at once, to snap his fingers.
And destroy half of life in the galaxy.
Yes, basically.
And the long story short, he does that.
He does it.
At the end of Infinity Wars, there's a big gut punch. He gets all the stones together. He snaps his fingers, and half of all the people
Is dusted.
are gone. They stop to exist. There's not a horrible death. They just turn into dust and they disappear. And that includes a lot of the superheroes who have been mainstays up into that point.
Yep.
But that's where Infinity Wars leaves off. The heroes who were spared from being turned to dust are Iron Man. I think Captain America survived.
America,
Scarlet. It's not Scarlett Johansson. Well, I just
Black Widow.
Black Widow.
Yeah. A few others.
Hulk
Rocket
and Thor. So we actually did get most of the mainstays did survive. But the world that they knew is not the same. And that's where it picks up. The Infinity War ends on a huge bummer.
Yeah.
A big
gut
loss.
punch, huge
It's actually
loss.
it's the Disney arc, but over a huge scale.
It's over 11 years.
Right.
Actually.
So this is the Disney arc low point. And that's where the movie that Michelle wants to talk about picks
that's where
up.
it
That's where it
opens.
starts. Is I think it's 5 years
Yep.
after this has happened, because once he disappeared half of the galaxy, the fight kind of ended, since half of the people who were fighting disappeared, and everybody had to process that huge grief
Absolutely.
of losing everybody.
That's how Endgame opens.
This is the beginning of the actual summary.
Yep.
Michelle, can you summarize Endgame for us?
Warning, more spoilers. So in this horrible place of despair, the being that saved the universe, or half life in all universe, was a rat, because a rat walked across the control board of a van that contained a quantum, what's the word?
Like some kind of
the
quantum
shrinking machine.
machine.
The
It's
shrinking
basically
machine.
like a
Ant-Man's-
juiced up shrink machine.
Yes, Ant-Man's shrinking machine, and it spat out Ant-Man, who was not disappeared as previously believed, but he's still alive. And through thinking about quantum mechanics, or basically...
Through magic is science.
Yes, the magic of science, Ant-Man convinces the others that there may be a way to go back in time using quantum science.
Yeah.
And he goes to, the group goes together to where Tony Stark has retired from being Iron Man, and now
He's the smartest person alive.
yeah, pretty much. And he's there with his wife Pepper Potts, and they have a daughter, Morgan. And they try to convince him to look into this. Maybe this is possible. He initially refuses because he's got too much to lose.
And he feels largely responsible for failing. Like
So-
many of the heroes.
But eventually he comes through and says, and he actually figures it out, like how to create a
Basically.
method of moving backwards in time
Yeah.
in order to, in essence, get all of the Infinity Stones
To get a second shot at
again,
stopping this.
exactly. So that's what they do throughout the movie. They go through the process of building this, and then they go back through multiple time arcs to go retrieve all 6 Infinity Stones.
Which kind of like out of the movie is a fun moment of going back through famous shots in the movie.
Yes.
Where we realized or didn't realize an Infinity Stone was actually there.
Yeah, and you see cameos from old characters. It's a good time. Yes, there's laughter and sobbing.
Oh, yeah, this movie especially.
So throughout the movie, you go through that, and they succeed. They manage to obtain all 6 stones, and they manage to snap their fingers and bring back everyone that Thanos had blinked out of existence.
Everyone, yeah.
Not by like reversing time, but just simply bringing them back to then and now.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not that they went back through time and undid what Thanos did, but they go back through time to gather the stones and basically make another wish.
Exactly.
So instead of unwishing the first wish,
Yep.
they just
Bring
wish
everyone
again
back.
to bring everybody back.
Yes. So that happens, and but right as that happens, that Thanos shows up again, and basically he explodes the Avengers compound, and with his army. You see this scene where it's basically just those superheroes against Thanos' entire horde.
And he is a horde that he's like gathered from space, like a huge space horde from planets and planets and planets.
It's an army. It's ridiculous. So here's this is probably my favorite scene in all of the MCU.
Oh yeah.
There is a fight, right? So the heroes are fighting just Thanos himself, and Thanos himself is a titan.
He's massive.
He's massive. He's extremely good at what he does, which is beating people down. And Captain America, Tony Stark is knocked out. Thor is not. Everybody's knocked out.
Yeah.
And Captain America is beaten to a pulp. He's like bloody and bruised.
Yeah.
And his shield is broken.
The ultimate paragon up until that point.
Right. He's just, you look at him, he looks so pitiful.
Yeah.
But he stands up anyway.
Yeah.
He gets to his feet.
Oh, you're making me emotional.
I know, right? I cried so hard during this scene, and I still cry about it whenever I watch this movie.
Yeah.
He stands up and is one man silhouetted, perfectly lit against this huge, vast army, but he stands up and he fights anyway.
Yeah.
And then very quietly in the background, you hear, "On your left," which is what he used to mess with
his other friend,
the Falcon. Right? When they're running laps around the Washington Monument, what is that, pool? But
yeah,
right,
the reflection pool.
Yes, and the wizard portal opens, and Sam flies through, and slowly all of the other wizard portals
all the other
open.
Avengers come back.
Exactly, and they're all leading armies to match the one that Thanos had brought to Earth, and that is my favorite scene.
It's
ever.
such a good rally moment. I'm so
good.
emotional right now.
And then, of course, Steve Rogers as Captain America, he says, "Avengers,
assemble."
And it's just, and then the final battle begins.
Wholesale beatdown of everybody.
Yes, to which they actually, the battle is so exciting, but they look like they're going to lose. Thanos manages to get his hands on the gauntlet again.
Unfortunately.
Yes, Tony Stark is fighting him with it and stuff. And unfortunately, Tony's knocked away. Thanos stands up and says, "I am inevitable," and he snaps his fingers, and you think that all is lost. But the nanosites, or whatever the technology of Iron Man, managed to obtain all 6 Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
And Tony Stark is the one to reply,
"I'm Iron Man."
And Iron Man. And he snaps his fingers and basically eliminates all of the threat that has come to Earth. Thanos' army and Thanos himself, of course. And that scene is just iconically, because I'm not sure you guys know, but 2008, so the very first movie that opened this story was Iron Man, at the end of which he says,
"I am Iron Man."
Exactly. It is. I hear that's ad-libbed, and that's just such a great way to end this arc.
It's a full circle.
I know. It's so well told. I definitely left this theater puffy because I had been crying so hard.
So
then
the end of that movie kind of sees the rest of the Avengers retired. That unfortunately Tony Stark, through
dies.
that last heroic effort, dies. The effort of using the glove is too much. Steve Rogers goes back in time, and he just kind of stays there because he's always been a man at a time.
Yeah, that's a wonderful end to his arc.
I agree. I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
Thor goes off into space. Ultimately, he goes back
on
off
his
into
own
space.
journey, right?
Hulk he takes a back seat like he's always wanted to. He's kind of done with the hero thing.
Yep.
And it makes way for a new generation of Avengers to come forward and save the world.
Yeah. Partially led by Peter Parker, by Spider-Man.
And then that's the end of Avengers Endgame. So I do want to ask, like, how did you see this movie? This was a long time coming.
Yeah.
So what was your first encounter with this movie? But like, what was your process?
There were 21 movies between Iron Man 1 and Endgame.
Oh my God. I didn't remember so many.
Well, including those two. But there were 21 movies, and I had seen them all in theaters.
That's amazing. I cheated. I did not watch all of them in theaters. I did a homework to watch the last movie. I had to watch like 3 movies to go see the last one.
Being a nerd about this specific fandom, I was every time there was a new movie released, I would be one of those people who'd be super duper excited to see it. And then the Marvel credits roll in the beginning, and it's like, oh my God, so excited. Every single one of the 21 movies. So, and to have waited 11 years to see the culmination of this arc, it was truly, I think a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone is going to be able to recreate what the MCU did.
Or what it felt like in that theater.
Yes.
When you're watching it with everybody else who's been along for the ride.
Exactly.
11 years. It must be like what people felt like when the last Star Wars came out. Not the most recent one, but when like Star Wars was
The last
episode
of
6.
the 3.
Yeah, the original trilogy.
Yep.
You know,
Kinda,
or
yeah.
like the last Lord of the Rings.
But
Like
it's-
one of those like once in a lifetime things where you're like, I was here the whole time.
Right? It's like you've been following along with the story the entire
Yeah.
time, and yeah, it's rewarding and it's amazing, and it's the reason why I still go see movies. I guess.
How did you feel when you left the theater?
I mean, I think the group of us were speechless.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't actually. We usually can talk a lot about movies after we watch them.
Yeah.
But this one just left us so satisfied, and at the same time, you know, they were upset
Yeah.
because
You had to process.
I was always team Iron Man, Tony Stark, and
it
it's
was
just the loss of my favorite character was devastating, and it was.
So then to you, why does this story mean so much to you personally?
Okay. I mean, besides the wild ride that I was on for the entire 11
I
years.
mean, that could be it. Like that it was an 11-year process. This is something that I like to talk about that maybe I want to talk about another time. But when you tell stories, there's another thing that is this idea of like transcending the medium.
Yes.
Which is hard to do, but when you can effectively do it, it creates a really memorable experience. And books do this, like House of Leaves does this, but I would push that maybe the Marvel Cinematic Universe did that by making such a long investment into this story that it transcends the medium of a single movie.
Yeah.
Or even a movie series.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think it touched me deeply because it's a mirror for all of our lives. All of our lives are this ridiculous, complex, massive number of factors that eventually may come together to be horribly depressing and, you know, cause immense despair. But in this movie, joy and happiness triumphs. Even with great loss, it triumphs.
Not in a happily ever after, but it does win in the end.
It does win. I mean, throughout the course of human existence, all of our lives, right?
Yeah.
By the end of our lives, we have lost a lot, but it's just a matter of having the courage to say it's a win.
Well, that's a very good line.
Yeah.
So then why do you think that this movie should be considered a tale of our time? I think there's a lot of arguments that could be made. I actually think this is a really good pick for a tale of our time.
Yeah.
But why do you think this should be considered a tale of our time?
It should be considered a tale of our time simply because that one scene where Captain America stands up in the face of great adversity and certain failure, he stands up and tries his best anyway.
Yeah.
And sometimes you win unexpectedly.
Yeah. with no expectation of backup that we know of, right? He decided that like, if I have any opportunity to stop this,
Yes.
I will stand up
Yeah.
against tyranny, or I will stand up against the oppression of everyone I know, everyone I love, and everyone I don't know.
Yeah. He stood up for exactly what he believed in, and he was willing to die for it.
That's why he's my favorite. Captain America makes me cry so much. It's not a patriotism thing.
So yes, throughout the 11 years and 21 movies of story, I think that it's a tale of our time because it drives home that message so well.
And I think also I would push because of the experience it was for so many people. It was a huge thing.
Absolutely.
A huge thing.
Yep.
So then to wrap it up, if you could give Avengers Endgame a one-phrase subtitle of your own, what would it be?
Oh no, this is
I think you should go back to what you said before, because I feel like you said it actually already. Like, have the courage to stand up
for what you believe in, regardless of cost or
yeah.
I think that would be
Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
The courage to stand up for what you believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a good one. Michelle, thanks for coming back on. This is a good one to start the year on.
Yeah.
I think this is a good message going forward.
Yes.
For everybody else.
Absolutely.
I love this for us. So as for everybody out there, unfortunately, we're out of time. This has been Tales of Our Time on Radio Taiwan International. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, with my guest and good friend, Michelle Chiang.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming back. So we're all out of time. I hope you enjoyed reminiscing about or learning more about Avengers Endgame.
Yes.
Having the courage to stand up for what you believe.
Yes.
A tale of our time. We'll see you next time.